Hi ladies, it's Michelle Last here and I'm sharing with you today one of the cards from the October Technique class using the Wondrous Wreath stamp set. Now the card I'm going to show you in this video is this Christmas card here, which has a centre fold opening with the wreath only half overlapping, and I'm going to talk you through how we make that. So if I just move these to one side, I am going to need to mount these up on clear blocks, and I'm going to show you some tips and some tricks on how to do it efficiently and hopefully to avoid any of the pitfalls. So just grab my clear blocks. Okay, so the photopolymer stamp set, the Wondrous Wreath, will cling to the clear blocks. Having said that, I need a slightly bigger clear block. I don't know whether you can see, but that's overlapping slightly, so I've got a slightly bigger clear block. Okay, don't worry that your Wondrous Wreath stamps taint and change colour if you're using dark colour pigment inks. It doesn't affect the stamping quality at all. It should stamp absolutely fine. I'm feeling like I need a bigger block. Where's my other box? Sorry, I've switched out my blocks there. I just want a slightly bigger block, and then I'm going to put the berries on that one. So I've got all three of my stamps from your stamp set mounted up onto clear blocks. So this one has got all the leaves of the wreath. This one has only got some of the leaves, and it will just overlap some of the ones we've already stamped, and then these are the berries. So inside your card pack, as always, your card packs come with everything that you need. Some of the things I've already done for you in case you don't own them. So as you open your card pack, the items you need are for the outside of the card are on the outside of the card, and the items you need for the inside are on the inside of the card. Check that your green and white fit, because some of the cardstock in the kits, I will check them before they post them out, we're a slightly different size, so just make sure that that's going to mount inside your card. Okay, and I'm just going to put that to one side, so pop that out of the way. So we've got a piece of Whisper White card here, and that's what we're going to stamp our wreath on. And I've also, inside your pack, you will get an extra piece of craft card. It looks like this, and it is basically, when you go to cut it out, I want you to cut a double layer, so you'll have to pass it through the Big Shot and pass it back through the Big Shot, but that will become clear in a moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to use pistachio pudding and garden green inks, and I'm just looking for those. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I've come back from class and I've got all the supplies, but they've got a little bit muddled in the boxes. So pistachio pudding, and that's not garden green ink, so it'll give you a really nice contrast between the colours. And what you're going to do is, I want you to be, can you see at the top of all the stamps we've got a little tab? The tab is to show you where the top of the stamp is, so that we're on the framelets also. There's a little tab at the top of the framelets here. That's to tell you that it's the top, otherwise you're going to find it really frustrating to know how to fit the framelit on top of the stamp. So a little tip is I want you to ink up the whole of the wreath in the pistachio pudding colour ink, and I'm going to try and get a little bit of ink on that tab, so that when I stamp it, obviously I'm just going to stamp it straight down like that, give it a nice press, but then I'm going to tip it to make that little tab touch the paper, and then I've got a little dink there to tell me that's the top of my wreath. So when I go to cut that out or line up, you're going to find that so much easier. It's going to save you a lot of time. So let's just clean that up. Okay, and now I'm going to use the garden green, and I'm going to use the leaf stamp. Now we know that that tab is at the top, so what I want to show you is, you see these two little leaves here? It lines up with those two little leaves there. If I zoom in a fraction for you, because it is just about getting the lining up correct. If I line that up there like that. Okay, so can you see those two fit over there like that? And then you have to just twist it slightly till you get the line up in all the other places too. So let me just ink up my darker leaves. So I've inked up my darker leaves. I'm going to stand up to do this. So I know I'm not actually pressing down at the moment, I'm just lining up the leaves over the top of the same shape on the wreath. Okay, so I'm feeling like I've got this one lined up, and I'm feeling like I've got this one lined up, and I'm feeling like I've got those two lined up. So I'm just going to be brave, press it down, and then I've managed to actually line it up. Woo, that's a nice feeling. It does take a little bit of practice, but once you've got that technique sorted, you'll be able to use them really easily. You just get used to which leaves go where. Now I'm going to use the cherry cobbler, and I'm going to do the berries. Now again, ink up your berries, knowing that the tab at the top means that the berries would fit here. And can you see there's 3 leaves? 1, 2, 3. The berries tend to fit in between the 3 leaves, and when you lay it down, like that one's going to go there. I'm just going to go for it. I'm just not absolutely sure that's in the right place, but as long as you've got it central on the wreath, that should be fine. That's perfect. I'm very happy with that. Now what we need to do is we need to cut it out. So if you've got a magnetic template, I would recommend you use your magnetic template at this point, because it will mean that the metal dies will stick to the platform. And what you're going to do, if I zoom back out, okay, so lay a piece of card down. Again, you need to know that that's the top. If you've forgotten to rock your stamps a fraction just to get that little mark, mark it with a pencil, mark it with a pen, just mark it, T for top, or just know it's the top. Otherwise you're going to be saying, oh god, I don't remember which way I stamped it, and you're going to be spending ages getting it lined up. Well, when you know that that's the top, can you see how simply and quickly I've got that right? What I would tell you is, when you've got the positioning right, it's perfect. When you've got the positioning wrong, no matter what you do, you keep turning, it just isn't right. So when you get it right, you'll know, because it just fits perfectly. So let's just get that back in the right place. Now my magnetic platform is clinging onto the die, so it's making it really easy to get a lovely position. Then can you see the inner tab has also got a little raised tab here, so that should be around here. And can you see there's a little recess just here? There's a little blank space, and that's where this little bit of the die comes in. So if I lie it down, I'll show you what I mean. So what you don't want is to be able to see any ink. If I zoom in again, what you don't want is to see any ink. So what we have to do is just move it over, make sure we can't see any ink, make sure the tab is also pointing up. That looks good to me. So I'm just going to zoom back out for you. Then you're going to get your other plate, lay it on top, and run it through your big shot. Now do you remember I said you're going to have the other piece of craft cardstock underneath it? I want you to run it through the big shot in one direction, and then I want you to run it back, and then it will cut through both. So run it through once and then run it back, and you will end up with the craft piece underneath, which just means that it's a nice craft colour here, but it also gives it extra rigidity, so it's not folding and flapping about, it's nice and sturdy. So you've all got one of those in your kit. Right, let me just get this off. So now I can remove the dies. Now if you don't own the dies, you could cut around this hand cut around it. That's perfectly possible. But if you use the dies, then you'll end up with a lovely quick wreath, and I'm all about the quick. So our wreath is done. I'm going to set that to one side. Inside your card kit you've got 2 strips of baked brown sugar card, and what I want you to do is I want you to get the hardwood stamp set. Now if you've got this in wood, it will very much depend where you have put the rubber and where you've put the label. So a little tip, let's see if I can move my grid paper. A little tip which helps me is I line up my stamp with the middle line of the grid paper and the base line of the grid paper. It doesn't look like I have lined that up, but I have. And I'm going to grab a pencil and I'm going to draw around the background stamp. So I know that my image is going to be somewhere within this rectangle. I've also marked here and here and here, because what I've done is I've looked at where the actual stamp is. So if I lay that down again and mark here and here and here and here, that means as long as I position my cardstock here, a bit further over, as long as I lay my cardstock within where the stamped image is, and I know where the stamped image is, now when I ink it up, I'm going to ink up my big hardwood stamp. I recommend laying it completely flat when you're inking it up. I'm using soft suede ink. I'm going to ink it all up nicely. So I've gone a slightly darker shade than the paper I've used. That when I line this up, I'm going to line it up within my pencil lines. I should manage to stamp on the strips of card, because the reason that I'm being so precise about this is the actual stamp itself is slightly just slightly larger than the actual length of the card, so it would be very tricky. You might end up with a little strip where you've missed stamped, and that's fine. We can just cut that off and cut your card down. So again, using the background stamps, what I want you to do is just go over every piece of the background stamp with the back of your hand, making sure you've added pressure all over the background stamp. Standing up is a good thing. A lot of people just do that and they miss this whole section. So I want you to make sure you've pressed all over, and then you should get a nicely stamped image. Now, what I have noticed, sorry, that's my mobile phone, I'm going to not answer that for a moment. I have missed it just slightly here. Can you see that? Now I could trim that off and make my card slightly smaller, but I'm going to ink the edges, so I'm going to try and hide it by inking my edges. So I would get that if I knew where my phone was. So I'm going to get my soft suede ink, I'm going to get a sponge and I'm going to go and ink around all the edges. I'm adding quite a bit of ink. You can use little sponge daubers if you prefer. I'm just going to go round. I think it needs re-inking. That's quite subtle, so if you want to go a bit more than subtle, actually do it this way. One. Okay, so I've inked the edges, and they simply are going to be stuck onto the 2 panels here. Let me just do that now. just run out. Those on the card front. Like that. Then what we're going to do is get our wreath and we're going to stick it on the front of our card. Don't forget you're only adding glue to 1/2. So I'm just going to flip it over and add glue just to 1/2. Otherwise you'll glue your card down. Right, see where the glue is? Okay. So I'm going to line that up, put that in place like that. Now on the inside you want to stamp, where's my sample one? Here. What I've done is I've got the Happy Wonderful Christmas sentiment from the stamp set, which I'll just get out for you now. I actually coloured mine in with marker pens to get 2 different colours of sentiment. So get your stamp, get your sentiment on your stamp, your block, and then you want to use marker pens. I'm going to use the same colours that I've used in the project, so that's going to be Garden Green and Cherry Cobbler. And I'm going to do the Wonderful in Cherry Cobbler, so you use the thick end of the pen. We know it's the thick end, it's got the thick stripe on it as opposed to the thin stripe. And I'm just going to, I'm not pointing my pen down, I'm going on the edge of my nib and I'm just colouring in the Wonderful. And then I've got the Garden Green, same applies, the thick tip, and I'm colouring in Christmas. And Happy. Okay, and then don't stick your white down onto your green just yet. In case you make a mistake, you can flip it over and use the other side. So I'm going to stand up for this again. I'm going to, you should be able to see all the way through the stamps. It should be quite easy to get it straight. Famous last words. Now if you're using the markers, now you can see I've missed that little loop on the L, but that's very easy to rectify. And now what I'm going to do is stick that onto the green. The Pistachio Pudding, that's the colour I've chosen, and that echoes the colour on the wreath. Stick that in the middle like so, and then I'm going to stick that in the middle of my card. I think my glue sticks seen better days. Like so. And now finally all we need to do is stick the Noel onto the front. Now in your card pack I have already cut it out for you. It's in the red glimmer paper. I've just noticed mine's got a little cut in it, but I won't worry about that. And I've already cut it out for you. If you are using the dies in the framelit pack, because there are 2 words in there, you've got Joy and Noel. One thing I would say is if you could get some of this waxed paper, you can get it from cereal packets for things like sugar puffs or something like that. Use that paper and put that in between the actual die and the paper you're cutting. And what it'll do is it'll mean that your Noel will peel out very, very easily, because the wax paper just keeps just lubricates the edges and means the paper will pop out. Something else to think about is, imagine this is my sheet of red glimmer paper. I actually had to lay the word on top of the paper with the side I wanted to show covered with the die like that, not underneath, otherwise you'd have it with the white side of the glimmer paper. Are you with me? So that would run through your big shot like that, and then there's the Noel. Now you're only going to be putting glue on the N and the L. Now this is a bit fiddly, just trying to get glue on parts of the letter. I'm managing, if I'm honest. Don't put it on the little swirly bit. But that should be enough actually. So let's put that over here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to decide where you want your Noel. And I'm going to have it like that. I might just close my little L up. Just hold it while it takes. And then you shouldn't see a little gap. That's it. And then lastly, last thing that I did, and if you have glossy accents or crystal effects from Stampin' Up, which is like a clear glue or resin type of piece of equipment. When I say piece of equipment, it's a tube, and creates a lovely epoxy finish. Here we go. I've got it. There we go. So crystal effects. All I then did was I squeezed out the crystal effects until it started to come out of the nozzle. Doing it on the back of my hand here. What a lot of people do is what I'm doing now, and just squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. Now I'm going to stop squeezing. Can you see a little bits come out in the back of my hand there? I'm just going to take the nozzle to the little berries and just dab it. I'm not actually squeezing to get any more out because I could end up with a great big splurge. So now I'm going to squeeze a bit more, get it coming out. And then I just went over the berries that I can now see that aren't covered by the letter. And that will give them a slightly raised, slightly shiny effect. And then I just think that added a little something, just a little finishing touch. Trying to put too much on here. Right. And then leave that to dry, probably for about half an hour. You haven't put a very thick layer on it, so it shouldn't take long to dry. But make sure that they are dry before you lay anything on top of it, because this can act as a really strong glue too. So there we go. And so that is your card complete. That didn't take long, did it? And that's the first card. So I look forward to seeing you hopping on over to the next video. Thanks very much.